Then one more thing that I mentioned is that the more we stop choking off this mercy, this unity and this love from ourselves, this then increases our ability to make wiser discernments about what are the rattlesnakes and what are the garter snakes. It increases our ability to make wiser decisions because we're no longer, it decreases the likelihood that our perceptions are going to be based on the conditioning of our nafs and limited by the early genetic programming in our human species. Which deeply ingrained in us that we're not going to experience the mercy unless we survive and kill or flee. We're not going to experience the mercy unless we act in such a way that our parents smile at us and pick us up. So, as long as we're caught in that training that we need to fulfill those conditions to experience the mercy, then we can't see it. It decreases the likelihood we'll be able to see solutions that are not connected to that kind of early programming. So another point, and really I think the main difference, one of the main differences between the Sufi way, the Sufi Islamic way on the one hand, and just Islam on the other hand, is that today's Muslims and non-Sufi Muslims throughout history underestimate the power of the nafs. They do not see how the nafs, the ego, can blind us at any instant. No matter how pious you are, how many prayers you've done, how much Quran you've memorized, the nafs, the programming of the nafs can completely distort your perceptions. Even if you're a Sufi, the nafs can completely distort your perceptions. But at least if you're a Sufi, you're aware that at each moment the nafs can distort things. And so you need to be extremely alert and taking refuge in the mercy and not choking off the mercy at each moment. It's there in Islam, inna nafs, in the Quran, inna nafs la amarata bisu. Not just the nafs commands you to evil, but this particular grammatic formulation, amara, intensely commands you to evil. And we see this being played out on the international stage all the time. Because people think they're being righteous and pious. Not just in Islam, but people of all religions. They think they're doing God's will. In the Inquisition, Crusaders were thinking they were doing God's will when they were killing Christians in Constantinople, not only killing Muslims. Catholics thought they were doing God's will when they were killing people in the Inquisition. Orthodox Jews think they're doing God's will when they're restricting Palestinian rights. Muslims, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, they all think they're doing God's will. They're not aware of the intensity of how the nafs can distort perceptions. Doesn't mean a non-Sufi Muslim could not be aware of that. It's just that the Sufis have focused. They're aware. They call a spade. The nafs intensely, right now, can be distorting our perceptions. How do I know? How do I know if the nafs is distorting my perceptions now? What have we been saying? What do you do when you think to yourself, how do I know? Maybe shaitan right now is distorting my perceptions. And shaitan, what's the agent of the naf, of shaitan? The nafs is the agent inside of yourself of shaitan. You know, we have these people that are conspiracy theorists. Something that said conspiracy theorists. They're right. There is an agent here. Right inside of you. Fortunately, Allah is even closer to you than that agent. Is the nafs distorting my perceptions right now? The answer is yes, the nafs is distorting your perceptions right now. What are you going to do about it? If the nafs wasn't distorting your perceptions right now, who would you be?
Sadie.
That's right. So what do you do when you think, are my perceptions being distorted right now? What do you do? Alhamdulillah. First of all, I've got to figure this out. You do have to make a determination. Is there a rattlesnake here or a garter snake here? You've got to figure that out. Is my nafs distorting my perception and this is not a garter snake, but it's a rattlesnake? But first, you kind of hold that, put that on hold for just a second, then stop choking off the mercy, sip this moment with a drop of gratitude. Alhamdulillah, that Allah is sustaining you in the midst of this potentially destructive situation. And then you give it your best shot. It seems that this is not a rattlesnake here. But it's a gamble. At any moment, shaitan, through your nafs, may be distorting your perceptions. Your best shot is by not choking off the mercy and doing the best you can to get free of the pictures of your nafs by allowing yourself to be nurtured by this unconditional mercy. And then we have, fortunately, the guidelines from our laws, our secular laws, religious laws, our brothers and sisters. You don't need to simply ask the angels if this is a garter snake or rattlesnake. You see, are there any herpetologists here? Are there any engineers here? But first, give yourself the edge of thinking outside the box of your nafs by not choking off the mercy from your heart. So that's basically what we've been talking about. So before I go on, any other questions? Yes. And what's your name?
Nafisa. This might be a whole other talk, but just when you were talking about
Wait for the mic, wait.
this might be a whole other talk, but part of what just the hope I'm looking for from this whole weekend too. You were talking about the leaders, they're leading from this other. They're not noticing the nafs that are commanding their actions more than the law. And I feel like there's this sea of Sufis and people in all paths who are every day looking at themselves, and I feel like it's all I can do to just be knocked over by those waves every day, just take care of me and my family and be with this community. And then there's a law over everything, but then it feels like there's this black layer of the leaders of the world. And why are they all, and why is so much of the power in that place? And I know that, but what I get from Allah is all I can do is pray and just be with my family, and that I'm not supposed to be the president or the head of, or, you know, I don't know what I'm asking exactly. But I'm looking for hope for why, how is that going to change? Is there ever going to be that government that CD talks about when there is that righteous, with Allah leaders?
And first of all, don't underestimate what could be a potential contribution from you. Maybe right now you're not the president or the governor of Texas. Doesn't mean next year you wouldn't be. So don't simply because you don't have the power of a world leader now, don't underestimate what could happen. Occasionally there are grassroots organizations just started by ordinary people who suddenly something opens up for them. But let's all come together and put yourself in Nafisa's situation. This is a problem. It's a big problem. World leaders seem to be unable to solve major world problems that are affecting all of us. This is disturbing. We know that some kind of a solution, some kind of a better solution needs to happen. We might have some role to play, even if it's nothing more than educating our children, which is a lot. So what is our role to play in this? That's what we understand as the realm of our lesser form of effort. Important, but we make our first recourse to take refuge in gratitude to Allah for this painful situation. So while we're feeling disturbed by these world problems that are going unsolved, world problems in an abstract way that have real concrete consequences in the suffering of humans all over the world. Starving, murdered, maimed individuals, people who will be, because they're malnourished when they're young, they'll be scarred for the rest of their lives. You know, babies that are being born addicted to intense drugs that will be scarred for the rest of their lives. This is really disturbing. So we keep in mind that there may be some way that we can, either through our immediate circle or through a broader community or through our state, or on some level, there may be some contribution with our lesser jihad. We have to keep that open, keep that in mind. We don't know what that's going to be. But we make our first recourse to remember that Allah is sustaining us even while we're feeling this, really disturbed by this. And then that will increase the likelihood, because we're no longer, relatively speaking, we're not as much choking off the mercy. This gives us a little bit more energy because we're feeling a little bit of at least the possibility of mercy. And then it also increases the likelihood we'll be less restricted by the solutions, kind of very broad solutions of our genetic programming, of fight or flee, or our early childhood conditioning. Good solutions in certain situations, but certainly they haven't worked for the world's leaders. They're not working well for us. to solve these problems. So by tasting this unconditional mercy helps to decrease the veils that are these early childhood and genetic programming are putting on ourselves, which will then increase the likelihood we'll be able to see a role that we might be able to play. Whether it's just through organizing Girl Scouts, like, I forget your new name. Rahima. Rahima organized a Girl Scout troop in Houston. And now there are 7 Muslim Girl Scout troops. Now there are 7 of them. Or just organizing a play group. Feeding one person in your community. You don't know how you can serve, but you put the question out there, how can I serve? And you allow yourself not to get starved of the rahmah, which then decreases the likelihood you'll get burnt out. I've been trying to help people for so long, forget it. Doesn't work. I'm just going to go and meditate. Enjoy nature. Slam the door. So, does that help?
Yeah, I mean, I've heard it a lot. I just need to hear it again and again. It helps just being in this community. I mean, there's so much hope just looking at the eyes of all these people. And if this multiplies all over everywhere, then that's huge.